Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Wednesday, August 5th, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. In Riverside today, we are looking at a high of 94.7 degrees with a low of 68 degrees, so please make sure to stay hydrated and seek shade if you are planning to spend any time outdoors. On today's episode, we are diving into the controversy behind a lawsuit filed by former FBI agents who claim they were targeted in a political purge. We will also examine the details surrounding the FDA's decision regarding Moderna's mRNA flu vaccine and what that could mean for public health. Plus, we will cover several other important headlines from across the country. We have all this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. This morning, we're following a major legal fight inside the FBI. Ethan, what's at the heart of this case?
Good morning, Grace. So this centers on three former FBI employees, Michelle Ball, Jamie Garman, and Blair Tolman. Back in March, they filed a federal lawsuit alleging they were fired as part of what they call a retribution campaign. According to the Associated Press, reported through PBS NewsHour, WFSB, and WSFA, these agents say their firings were pure political payback.
Payback for what, exactly?
They say it's directly tied to their roles investigating President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. These are agents who describe their own service as, quote, exemplary and unblemished, end quote. They'd expected to spend their entire careers at the Bureau. And they claim they were abruptly fired without cause and never even given a chance to respond.
That's a serious claim. Who do they say is behind these firings?
The lawsuit points squarely at FBI Director Kash Patel. According to the AP reporting, Patel led a broader personnel purge that targeted employees who'd investigated Trump, or who were simply seen as contrary to the administration's interests. The reports say Patel wanted to, quote, remake the Bureau in his own image, end quote. So this isn't just about three people. It's framed as part of a much larger house cleaning.
And how is the administration responding to all this?
They're pushing back hard. In the actual termination letters, Director Patel and Pam Bondi, who was Attorney General at the time, claimed these agents and the prosecutors tied to Special Counsel Jack Smith's team were responsible for, quote, weaponizing federal law enforcement, end quote. So the administration is essentially turning the accusation around. The plaintiffs, for their part, call those claims baseless and defamatory.
You mentioned Special Counsel Jack Smith. Where does he fit into the timeline?
He's central to the backstory. The investigation these three agents worked on eventually culminated in an indictment by Special Counsel Jack Smith. That indictment accused Trump of scheming to overturn the 2020 election. So these weren't peripheral figures. Their work fed directly into one of the biggest prosecutions in recent memory.
But that case didn't go forward, did it?
No, it didn't. After Trump returned to the White House in 2024, Smith abandoned that case entirely. He also dropped a separate case involving the illegal retention of classified records at Mar-a-Lago. Smith cited long-standing Justice Department legal opinions that prohibit the federal indictment of a sitting president. So the cases collapsed, but the people who investigated them are now, they argue, paying the price.
Let's turn to the support side. I understand this lawsuit is getting a lot of backing.
A remarkable amount, actually. In the week leading up to August 4th, 2026, that's just yesterday, 5 friend-of-the-court briefs were filed supporting the agents. These are what's called amici briefs, and they come from a real cross-section of the legal world. It signals this case has reached well beyond the three plaintiffs themselves.
Start with the big one. What did the FBI Agents Association say?
The FBI Agents Association represents nearly 12,000 members, so its voice carries real weight here. They argued the firings were illegal because the agents were denied due process and punished based on perceived political affiliation, and they raised a practical warning too. They said the Bureau simply cannot function if agents have to choose between accepting a lawful assignment that could get them fired or rejecting it and getting fired for insubordination. It's a no-win situation, in their view.
That's a striking way to put it. Who else weighed in?
A group of former senior Justice Department officials also filed a brief. They said this purge undermines what they described as a, quote, half-century of independence, end quote, as a guiding principle. Their concern is that these actions would, quote, chill the independence, end quote, of current and future staff at the FBI, the DOJ, and other agencies. The fear is that people will start second-guessing their professional judgments, worried they'll be seen through a partisan lens.
And there's a group focused on ordinary citizens too, right?
Yes, that's Justice Connection, a network of department alumni. Their warning goes a step further. They said a politicized FBI could eventually target ordinary citizens based on their speech, their associations, or their perceived disloyalty. And they made a constitutional point, noting the Constitution was specifically designed to prevent exactly these kinds of abuses. So they're framing this as a threat that could reach far beyond the Bureau's own ranks.
Were there any other briefs filed?
There were two more. First Amendment scholars submitted a brief, and so did a group called Lawyers for the Rule of Law. Both came down in support of the plaintiffs. Taken together with the others, that's 5 separate filings, all pointing in the same direction. It's a pretty coordinated show of support for people who, a year ago, were just doing their jobs.
When you step back, what's the bigger picture these groups are painting?
Collectively, these filings represent a bipartisan pushback. And that word bipartisan matters, because this isn't coming from just one side of the political spectrum. They're responding to waves of terminations that have roiled the FBI over the last year and a half. The through line in all of them is the need to maintain what they call an, quote, apolitical professional career corps of agents, end quote.
So this really is about more than 3 careers.
Exactly right. On the surface, it's a wrongful termination suit brought by Michelle Ball, Jamie Garman, and Blair Tolman. But the volume of support suggests people see it as a test case. The question underneath is whether federal law enforcement can stay independent when administrations change. That's why you're seeing former officials, professional associations, and scholars all lining up.
Do we have a sense of how the administration will defend itself going forward?
Their core argument is already laid out in those termination letters from Patel and Bondi. They maintain the firings were justified because, in their telling, these employees weaponized federal law enforcement. So they're not framing this as retaliation at all. They're framing it as accountability. The plaintiffs reject that entirely, and that clash is what a court will now have to sort through.
And where does the case stand right now?
The lawsuit was filed back in March, and as of today, August 5th, 2026, it's still working its way through the federal courts. What's new this week is that surge of support, those 5 amici briefs filed just before yesterday. That's the development that's drawing fresh attention. The underlying questions about due process and political retaliation are still very much unresolved.
Before we go, why should someone at home care about an internal FBI dispute?
Because the groups involved argue it touches everyone. Justice Connection made that case directly, warning that a politicized bureau could eventually turn its focus onto ordinary citizens. And the former DOJ officials warned about a chilling effect across law enforcement. So even though this starts with 3 fired agents, the people filing these briefs say the stakes reach into questions about fairness, free speech, and how power gets used.
Really important context this morning. Ethan, thank you for walking us through it.
My pleasure, Grace. We'll keep tracking the case as it moves through the courts.
Welcome back. This morning, we're watching a major decision from the FDA that could reshape how we fight the flu. It involves Moderna and a brand new kind of vaccine. Our health reporter Chloe is here to break it all down. Chloe, good morning. What exactly are we waiting on today?
Good morning, Grace. So today, August 5th, is what's called the PDUFA Target Action Date. That's the deadline under the Prescription Drug User Fee Act for the FDA to decide whether Moderna's flu vaccine can be sold in the U.S. The vaccine goes by the name mRNA 1010, and if it clears this hurdle, it would be a genuine first for the flu.
A first? What makes this vaccine so different from the flu shot most of us already get?
This is the big one, Grace. If mRNA 1010 gets approved, it would be the very first flu vaccine to use mRNA technology. That's the same technology behind the COVID-19 vaccines that so many people got during the pandemic. Traditional flu shots are made using older methods, sometimes grown in eggs, which takes months. The mRNA approach could, In theory, let manufacturers respond faster when a new strain shows up.
So who would actually be eligible to get this shot if it's approved?
Moderna is taking a two-track approach here. They're seeking full approval for adults aged 50 to 64. And for people 65 and older, they're seeking what's known as accelerated approval. That's a slightly different pathway that lets a vaccine reach patients while more data gets collected. So the focus, at least for now, is squarely on older adults, who tend to face the highest risk from the flu.
And has an expert panel weighed in on whether this thing actually works?
They have, and that's an important part of the story. Back in June, an independent advisory committee looked at the evidence. They voted unanimously that the vaccine's benefits outweigh its risks. Unanimous votes like that don't happen every day, so it was a strong signal of confidence. That's part of why so many people expected a smooth road to approval.
But it sounds like the road hasn't been smooth at all. What went wrong?
You're right, it got bumpy fast. At one point, the FDA unexpectedly refused to review Moderna's application. And that contradicted earlier discussions that had been supportive of the vaccine. That kind of reversal creates real uncertainty in the market. Health economists and academics point out that when regulators seem inconsistent, it can spook investors and slow down research into other promising uses of mRNA, like cancer treatments and even Lyme disease.
That's a big ripple effect. Is there politics tangled up in this too?
There is, and it's hard to separate from the science right now. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has publicly questioned the validity of mRNA vaccines, and the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, canceled $500 million in mRNA research funding. They cited what they described as evidence-based public health regulations. So you've got a situation where the technology is advancing while some of the government support behind it is being pulled back.
$500 million is a lot. How are people in the research world reacting to those cuts?
With a lot of frustration, and in some cases, very personal stories. One man named Janusz Raks spoke out. He had inoperable lung cancer, and during a BioNTech mRNA trial, his cancer vanished. He argues that cutting this kind of funding directly diminishes the prospects for life-saving research. When you hear a story like his, it puts a human face on what can otherwise feel like an abstract budget fight.
That really does bring it home. So is the flu vaccine the only thing Moderna is working on right now?
Not at all. And this is where the story gets even bigger. At the same time all this is happening, Moderna is expanding its platform with a new Phase 1 clinical trial. This one targets a vaccine called mRNA 1469. It's aimed at the Bundibugyo strain of the Ebola virus. So they're not just betting on flu, they're pushing mRNA into some of the world's most dangerous diseases.
Ebola. Where is that trial happening, and why now?
The trial is being conducted in Canada, with approval from Health Canada. It's supported by up to $50 million from the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, known as CEPI, and the timing is urgent. The Bundibugyo strain is currently driving the second-largest Ebola outbreak in history, and that's unfolding in the Democratic Republic of the Congo right now. So this isn't theoretical. There's an active crisis behind it.
The second largest outbreak in history. That's a striking detail. Does the mRNA approach offer any advantage against something like Ebola?
That's exactly the hope. The appeal of mRNA is speed and flexibility. Because you're essentially working from genetic instructions, you can potentially target a specific strain like Bundibugyo more quickly than with older vaccine methods. It's still very early. This is Phase 1, so we're talking about the first tests in humans. But if it works, it could give the world a faster tool the next time an outbreak flares up.
So in a way, the flu decision today is about much more than just the flu.
Exactly, Grace. Today's decision on mRNA 1010 is really a bellwether. If the FDA approves it, it validates mRNA for a common seasonal illness that affects millions. That could give momentum to everything else, from the Ebola work to those cancer and Lyme disease applications. But if the approval stumbles, Given all the political tension and the funding cuts, it could cast a longer shadow over the whole field.
For folks watching at home, when should we expect to actually hear the FDA's answer?
Well, the PDUFA date is a target, not always a hard guarantee, so the decision could come today, or it could slip a bit, depending on how the agency handles it. But because today is the official action date, this is the moment everyone in the industry is watching. Investors, researchers, and patients are all refreshing their screens, so to speak.
And just to be clear for our viewers, is this something the average person could get this flu season?
That's the key question, and it depends entirely on today. If mRNA 1010 gets the green light, it would still need to move through distribution before it reaches pharmacies and clinics, so it's not something you'd necessarily grab tomorrow morning. But it would set the stage for a new option, especially for older adults, in the seasons ahead. For now, the traditional flu shots remain what's available.
Before we let you go, what's the one thing you'll be watching most closely today?
For me, it's whether the FDA follows the science that advisory committee laid out in June. That unanimous vote said the benefits outweigh the risks. So if the agency approves it, that's consistency. But given the earlier refusal to even review the application and the political headwinds from Secretary Kennedy and those HHS funding cuts, I'll be looking to see if the decision matches the evidence or the politics.
That's a sharp point to end on. Chloe, thank you so much for walking us through all of this.
My pleasure, Grace. I'll be tracking the FDA closely and will bring your viewers the decision on mRNA 1010 the moment it lands.
That's our health reporter, Chloe, following a landmark day for Moderna and for mRNA technology. We'll have updates as they come in. Stay with us. Here are some other headlines. Turning our attention to the tech world, where things are getting a bit too personal. In a landmark ruling, a jury has decided that Instagram and YouTube are liable for social media addiction. It seems the court found that these platforms really knew how to reel people in, leaving users completely scrolled out. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is taking his fight to the courtroom as XAI sues the state of Minnesota over notification technology. It looks like Musk is trying to strip away the legal protections for these AI tools, as he finds the whole situation quite revealing. Shifting gears to the battlefields of Eastern Europe, it was a night of absolute chaos. Overnight into Wednesday, August 5th, 2026, Russia launched a 2-hour barrage on Kyiv and the surrounding region. The attack was a real cocktail of destruction, featuring 24 ballistic missiles, 115 drones, and 4 missiles identified as either supersonic Onyx or hypersonic Zircons. President Volodymyr Zelensky reports that 17 people were killed and 44 others were wounded. Ukrainian officials say the strikes hit a railway station and civilian facilities, including a brewing company, which certainly put a damper on production, as well as building materials warehouses and a Nova Poshta postal sorting center. The Russian Defense Ministry is trying to deliver a different story, claiming they hit 4 targets involved in military operations, and alleging the postal center was distributing dual-use goods for robotic systems and drones. President Zelensky is sounding the alarm on a critical shortage of Patriot interceptors, noting that air defense missile supplies in the first half of 2026 have plummeted to 1/3 of 2025 levels. Ukraine is fighting back, however, as their drones struck a wild berries warehouse in the Tula region. That is the 14th facility for Russia's largest online retailer to be hit in less than 3 weeks. It seems their shipping and handling is facing some serious interruptions. On the other side, Russia claims to have downed 475 Ukrainian drones across 16 regions and Crimea, and reports hitting 3 bulk carriers south of Odessa. Finally, we head to the Mitten State, where the political tension is brewing. The results of the Democratic Senate primary between Haley Stevens and Abdul El-Sayed are still pending as votes continue to be counted. Abdul El-Sayed says it is too early to call it, though he claims he vastly overperformed expectations and is calling for party unity to defeat Republican nominee Mike Rogers. Haley Stevens has urged her supporters to either get some sleep or get some coffee while they wait for the final tally. Stevens has plenty of support in her corner, with appearances from former Senator Debbie Stabenow, former Governor Jim Blanchard, and Representative Hillary Scholten, alongside endorsements from Governor Gretchen Whitmer and retiring Senator Gary Peters. In other Michigan news, William Lawrence has won his primary for the 7th District, setting up a general election clash with incumbent Tom Barrett. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.